In 2019, I started on the carnivore way of eating, and now it is 2024, and I'm looking back on my journey, and I must say it was really the best period in regards to health and quality of life, how I feel overall in my body. And I would never, ever go back to veganism nor vegetarianism, because nothing is as satiating as meat. Yes, you can certainly get a lot from eggs, also from dairy, but if I compare that to meat, especially beef and even pork, how you feel afterward when you have eaten it, it's just the body is satiated, happy, nourished. Nothing can compare to that. I shared this just recently in the Autistic Carnivore group, and looking back, I see that so much more, even since then, has improved over time. In January 2019, I went from vegan, and that was no junk food, okay? It was all organic and terribly expensive at that, to paleo because somebody recommended me to start meat eating again, which took quite a lot of inner back and forth. And in the end, I decided, okay, I have nothing more to lose. I just try that approach. Since there were so many health issues, I just couldn't go on like that anymore on the vegan way of eating. My body just couldn't take it anymore. Yeah, and then I also came across Natasha Campbell McBride's book at the time, which is the yellow one about gaps. Unbeknownst to me, I had a histamine and a plant lectin intolerance. Therefore, the GAPS way of eating did also not really work for me. But what I learned from Natasha Campbell McBride's book and also her great presentations on YouTube, that there are indeed some autistics that do not eat anything from the plant kingdom. So that opened up the idea that I might try that way of eating. Just meat and other animal-based products. So in April 1st, 2019, I went carnivore. And it was indeed a watershed moment. It blew my mind, literally. Within 1 month, the brain fog was gone, just evaporated. And that was such a blessing, because suddenly I could read long text again, books and studies, and take in all that information. It was really like a light bulb had gone on in my brain. Just amazing. And you will never believe it until you experience it yourself. That super pristine, clear thinking. And that's such a gift. Yeah, and all the bloating was gone. And within 3 months, the chronic pain was gone. The back pain, I could not stand for longer than 30 minutes. Or sit for longer than 30 minutes because of the tailbone pain. And when I got out of bed in the morning, I had to sit down immediately because of the severe back pain. And also the left hip pain and stiffness just gone. And the dry skin, oh my gosh, my skin was so dry as a vegan. It was horrible, that itching, and nothing helped. And then, as soon as I went carnivore, that also went away. I felt so comfortable within my body and had my mobility back and no chronic pain. Yes, I do have occasional migraines still, but even those, now after all this time, they have become way less pronounced. And I used to have 3-day migraines and sometimes even 7-day migraines. So it was 3 days on one side and then it switched to the other side. Stuff like that. And like that weird muscular pain. Yeah, so that's gone. So now if I have migraines, they are not so pronounced and last for a day most of the time. So all I can say is just so much improvement in quality of life. So the only thing I was still struggling with, even on the carnivore way of eating, was histamine intolerance. For a long time, I really didn't know what this was. There were weird symptoms reacting to different foods, but also for me, it was summer heat intolerance. and exercise intolerance. So strong sweating, even when I went into a bathtub, my head got red like a tomato. So this led to migraines. I could not really exercise thoroughly. I just felt drained, exhausted, unhappy, and had a migraine usually, and sometimes muscular pain, and that's not the same as sore muscles. It's more like a fibromyalgic pain, similar to when you have the flu. That's the best how I can describe it. Yeah, so I just didn't know what I was dealing with, why this was still an issue, and had been since the time when I had this burnout in 2007. That was way back, and back then I was a vegetarian, having issues even on the vegetarian way of eating, having the same symptoms as I just described. And even after eating as a vegetarian, after every meal, I felt exhausted to the bone. Like I was so tired after every meal, and that's such a bad feeling. And I even felt asleep. So that told me something wasn't right, but well, all I did back then was weaning off of sugar. But when I think back, I believe it's actually a plant lectin intolerance that started to show. Because as a vegetarian, yes, then you have a lot of plant lectin intake, obviously. And only so much later, when I watched the presentation of Dr. Paul Mason, I learned about what plant lectins do. So that's my explanation why I felt so exhausted after every meal as a vegetarian and vegan too later on, and why I don't feel exhausted now on the carnivore way of eating. Completely different. You just eat, feel satiated, and go on. No fatigue, no exhaustion. As I said, even on the carnivore way of eating, I still had a histamine intolerance. So this means that I had to be really careful with high histamine foods, even if they were animal-based, meaning bone broth still gave me migraines, bacon, shrimp or oysters, yeah, and even eggs were an issue on and off. And even the build-up of histamine, if you keep your meat just in the fridge. So I had to freeze the meat and take it out directly out of the freezer into the pan. Yeah, and it was really quite an issue, which still caused quite frequent migraines if I ate the wrong food, despite all the other improvements in health. This was still my issue, and I learned about this through Dr. Georgia Ede. I love her presentations on YouTube. She also talks about these plant anti-nutrients, what they do, and about her own journey with histamine intolerance. So that's how I came across this information. And as I say, even carnivore, it's a journey. It's a healing journey that is ongoing. And you learn by doing, by experimenting, and you see how your body reacts to it, right? So this was around 2020. And I tried to resolve this histamine intolerance issue, but I was kind of at my wit's end. So I just continued with what I was doing, avoiding high histamine foods and freezing my meat. Yeah. By the way, you can watch all these interviews on YouTube. They are really great. I also highly recommend the one with Dr. Paul Mason on plant lectins. Even on the carnivore way of eating, it's a healing journey that is ongoing. And I am the type who loves to do research, investigate stuff, read tons of books. And of course, as autistic myself, I am interested in the autism discussion, but looking at it from very different sides, right? And therefore I came across the books of Olga Bogdashina, especially the one Autism and the Edges of the Known World, Sensitivities, Language, and Constructed Reality, where she actually compares Aldous Huxley's experiences on mescaline, I think it was, with Donna Williams' book, Autism and Sensing. And you can watch her video, it's still up on YouTube. And well, long before I came across autism, I thoroughly looked into trauma and complex post-traumatic stress injury, and learned about the nervous system side and biology, how the organism will react to danger, what goes on in the body when you switch from parasympathetic rest and digest into the sympathetic fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, appease survival responses. So I was very aware that especially when you are neurodivergent, you might be even more highly sensitive to stressors. And of course, this can also influence your digestion, obviously, because if you are not in rest and digest, then your digestion is turned off. Your body is ready to survive, and then the least thing you need is digesting, right? Anyway, because of this research, I came across Dr. Ian McGilchrist's master and his emissary book, The Divided Brain, where he describes how different the left hemisphere perspective is in comparison to the right hemisphere perspective. Yeah, so this made a lot of sense to me. And then I came across Jill Bolte Taylor. Her TED Talk, My Stroke of Insight, is fantastic. So yes, that was another holy watershed moment. So it clicked. Yeah. And then from there on, I was very much interested in the psychedelic trauma therapy, which brings you out of that ego world of interpretation that Donna Williams describes into a more right hemisphere perception. And in that state, you can really heal trauma because you are not stressed but relaxed. So my aim was trauma healing, actually. And at the time, the focus wasn't really on healing the histamine intolerance. And at some point, I came across Amanita Dreamer, and she herself is neurodivergent, and she talks a lot about Amanita muscaria, the fly agaric. Therefore, I got really curious and interested, and at some point I was ready to try it myself. So you see, even as a carnivore, you have to be open for different solutions. It's not about being fanatic and saying, oh, this is not carnivore, so I will not touch it. But if you realize that you have to experiment and try other things when what you have been doing did not work for certain things, it worked fine for what I have described, yes. But I felt I needed something else for the trauma aspect of things, healing all the different traumas in one way or another, and then yes, you just try. If it doesn't work, you try something else. And I'm so glad I was open and decided to try Amanita muscaria myself. To my greatest astonishment, it healed my histamine intolerance overnight. And I really did not want to believe it. I was told so by the mushroom spirits, or whatever you want to call it, and this is the right hemisphere perception, all that gets filtered out through the left hemisphere perspective. What Aldous Huxley called the filtering valve. With the right hemisphere perception, all that filtering is reduced, and suddenly you have way more insights. So you realize, oh, there is way more information that I didn't know consciously with the left hemisphere, but unconsciously, intuition, and this other type of perception. It's always there, but it's just filtered out. Everybody has it. We can always tap into it. For example, through the flow state. Everybody has experienced some kind of flow state at least once. And through sports or being creative, being in nature, there are so many ways to activate this flow state. And then, of course, there are the psychedelics, and those have that flow state activation accelerated. Amanita muscaria is not, in that sense, psychoactive. It's more healing on the physical side, and it's activating the GABA pathways, similar to ketamine. So it's different. It's not like psilocybin or all the others. It's really different. And what I can say, it's relaxing the mind. And you go deeper. And you fall asleep most of the time at some point. And in that deep sleep state, of course, there is a lot of physical healing happening, but also trauma healing. And in the morning, you might wake up and have very deep insights or sudden memories from childhood come up, or you had very interesting dreams, stuff like that. So since 2021, I have been working with Amanita muscaria, and after that fantastic healing overnight of that histamine intolerance, oh my gosh, I could suddenly eat high histamine foods, shrimp, oysters, bacon, and even cheese and butter and milk, which were absolutely impossible before I got so heavy migraines from dairy products. And now it's like another miracle, so I can have way more carnivore foods now after this. And I continue on the carnivore or meat-based way of eating, but I also work in this way on and off with Amanita muscaria and heal the trauma side of things. So I can truly say it's very clear Amanita muscaria was the one to heal histamine intolerance. It healed my gut. And it was Amanita muscaria that inspired me to start going into the forest on a daily basis. As I said before, I had this exercise intolerance too, but now walking in the forest, that's okay again. And I highly enjoy nature, and of course it's oxygenating, but also deeply relaxing to listen to these forest sounds. And I feel inspired so much by the beauty of nature around me. And this also helps with stress. So, yeah, you have to be open to experiment. Whatever comes across your way, be open, try it out. Don't be fanatic and say, oh, it's not carnivore. This is a healing journey, improvement of quality of life.